You may ask yourself why. Why is it important to discover technology when it is clearly in front of us? Simply put, it is changing our lives. The idea we need to understand is this: what is it doing to us? This series will explore the advancements in technology and try to discover the ways technology has changed the way we live. From the cell phone, tablet, or computer you may be watching this on, to that self-checkout line you may have used the other day in order to avoid waiting in line for a cashier to help you. Technology is changing. It is important to understand this and realize the changes that are occurring in our lives. We need to take a step back and understand the value of technology, but also become informed of what it is doing to us on the grand scheme of things. This is technology. As a culture, video games have become an ever-expanding medium, much like film and music has expanded. However, in the 50-plus years of video game creation, it has evolved from simple black and white pixels to full motion capture 3D models that look almost realistic. The evolution of graphics has also come an evolution to storytelling and gameplay. Throughout this video, I will show you a video to show off a representation of the graphical achievements over the 50-plus years of video game history. Already though, in this video, I've lied to you. The reality is, the first video games were not actual video games, but rather text adventures similar to that of a choose-your-own-adventure novel. On teachinghistory.org, author Jeremiah McCall covers a brief history of adventure video games, describing the first adventure game, titled simply As Adventure, in his short essay. He describes the game saying that the player read text descriptions of a cave and typed in simple noun-verb commands, such as go north, take lantern, etc., to navigate through the cave and interact with its denizens. Text-based games worked around the limited RAM or random access memory to early computers by focusing on story and setting at the expense of graphics. However, in 1980, the Atari 2600 released its own adventure. Their version of the game included the exploration, looting, and simple monster fighting of the early text adventures. Given the limitations on computer processing power, however, the main character had to be represented as a colored square. Objects and monsters, swords and dragons, were all represented by crude, pixelated graphics. Still, the use of a joystick and a visual environment gave players the ability to explore more widely and in real time, rather than in the turn-based format of text adventures. Nowadays, games have evolved exponentially. As McCall puts it, the art of game design developed and the representational abilities of computers increased. Players of the adventure genre came to demand more sophisticated stories and moral choices. This doesn't just sit with the adventure genre too. Games of all types have evolved, ranging from sports to puzzle, shooters to rhythm, and of course, adventure to role-playing games. All of these genres have evolved, and as the consoles have evolved to accommodate the industry, so have the ways that video games have been distributed to audiences. I remember a time when getting a new video game was purely on whim and word of mouth, having to use friends and magazines in order to find out if a game was actually enjoyable. Nowadays, with the internet, it has shaped ways we can look up games prior to playing them and making decisions that way instead. And because of the internet, publishing and distributing games has become much easier. In a video titled Understanding Distribution in the Video Game Business, a discussion between several game developers and publishers discuss what it might take to not only publish, but distribute a video game. The following is a clip from this discussion.
So Ed, tell me a little bit, how do you see games distributed right now? I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about the difference in publishers,
Yeah.
but obviously the platforms dictate that, right?
We will talk about publishers. This is important because I think unlike the film industry, your industry, is that there are times where you can be your own publisher. When you see this list, the more expensive those games are, the more risk associated with it. Frankly, you better be walking in with like a big IP that's well known or some big support from a studio, or you better have had a track record of having a hit game yourself. you're not going to get traction with a major publisher just because you're walking in with an idea. You got to have something behind it that makes sense. So if you're not one of those two, you better start thinking in terms of one of the secondary or tertiary ways of getting games made, a little less expensive, a little less risk associated with it, maybe more like Steam, maybe more like mobile, maybe more like some sort of flash game to get it underway. If that's really what you're trying to accomplish. And in those cases, sometimes you actually don't need a publisher. If you can fund it yourself, a publisher is either money or marketing behind you, but there are examples on Steam of people that essentially are self-published. There are self-published examples, fewer or less these days, but there are examples on mobile as well, or you could do it on Flash too. A lot of this is coming down to just what are you trying to accomplish and how much can you afford to do yourself or take on in order to get the project done, or do you really need out external financing, and then you'll have to go to either a publisher or, I suppose, a Kickstarter. But frankly, an original idea just on the back of a napkin, unless you've got some property in the work that's coming out, or you've got a history of having successfully made a game before, it's going to be tough to get financing.
Well, and of all the largest console publishers, and in thinking about them, you can count them on one or two hands. How many of those guys have licensed IP as part of their main stable? If you can think about it,
just the big ones, right?
not even the big ones
anymore.
Well,
right?
Used to be.
Would you not consider Warner a big player? I mean, I do as a publisher.
Well, I get they own their IP. A little
licensed.
different.
Well, like EA is obviously putting a lot into the Star Wars
Agreed.
license.
right? And if they are, that's one, right? If Activision had Transformers and Spider-Man, right? But I mean, those are not small IP. So looking at as a producer saying, hey, I want to get Activision to go pick up my next film, and they've only got those two, and those aren't really their focus. Destiny and Call of Duty are blowing those away. Skylanders is going to be so much bigger than anything that they're going to do with a licensed property. So managing your expectation, not to deflate it, but to understand that walking in and pitching Activision is not necessarily in your best interest if you're walking in with a $5 or $10 million film that's really cool. That's going to be a different negotiation. It may happen, but we don't see that happening. But at the same time, you're looking at mobile and tablet space and some of these other spaces where the time and the cost to develop these things are more in line with that. So looking at this, so if we're looking at a console, right now, minimum 2 to 3 years for development, right, for a larger console game, right? A lot of the larger games, Call of Duty is now on a 3-year development cycle. How long was Titanfall? It was 3 years? Maybe more? Well,
Let's say 3.
let's say 3, right? So if you have a film that's
We were a
going to
little
get...
distracted with some other stuff in the meantime.
I don't know.
No idea what you could be talking about there.
So if your film is going to get greenlit, not just the development of the film, but actually when it gets greenlit and someone says, okay, we're going to make this movie, that's going to be 14 months, 16 months, 18 months. So if I'm greenlighting the film and then I say, okay, game, go, right? And that's assuming we've got a team in place, we've got the technology in place, we've got this idea of what we're going to do, and I've got 14 to 18 months, there's going to be a problem. There's a disconnect there, right? And if my film was a $10 or $20 million film and I've got a $60 million video game, that math doesn't make sense. Now let's look over at maybe mobile, right? So mobile, now you're talking something that could cost $1 million, $2 million. It might only take 8, 12, 14 months. And there's some really good stuff on the iPad and some other platforms that's pretty decent. And so if you look at, Unreal has their engine, their game engines available for developers to develop on these platforms now. So now if you have a platform that can take 14 or 16 months and you could pay for it as part of your budget and you're raising your equity for your film anyway, why are you going to go to a publisher to get that money and have them tell you how to make your game when you already own that IP? So these platforms are starting to open up new opportunities for us. And I think now I'm hoping you guys are starting to see why I want you guys to see this landscape, because if you've got a really cool idea, I don't want you to just have your ideas deflated by saying, I'm not going to put it on the Xbox.
With an ever-expanding gaming industry, publishing games has become easier than before. With platforms like Steam, a browser designed to home thousands of PC games, indie developers can find a home to publish their work through them. And with its community-based presence allowing other users to review the games, a seamless environment for gamers has essentially been created. Console developers such as Nintendo and Sony have created their own versions of these environments, with Nintendo owning the Miiverse and Sony having social groups. Sharing and socializing of games has become much easier, and designing stores on their consoles to allow for digital purchasing of their games has made distributing games much easier, but also hindering businesses like GameStop, a franchise dedicated to marketing used games back to customers, has now resorted to becoming a publisher themselves and opening their market to other kinds of markets to avoid their losses because of digital purchasing. Video games have changed over several years, from simple graphics to partially real CGI, and distributing and publishing games have become harder to do as well. The industry is narrowing. With cell phones and tablets entering the game as well, anyone can be a developer. I'll leave you with some words from Mark Hickey, the former business development manager at the company Gameloft, and he explains in the film In the Game are the effect of mobile games and what he believes people look for in this market.
Basically, when it was released, we had a website, gameloft.com, and you would come to that website, download the game to your computer, then you'd go to the store and buy a cable for your phone, and then you plug your computer into your phone, and then you had to go and find a software that would allow your computer to talk to your phone. And then finally, when you did all of that, you had your $3 game or $5 game installed on your mobile phone. Now, today, games are delivered wirelessly, so basically you fire up the internet on your handset, you go to your carrier's website, and then you check out the games, and you find one that you want. You download it downloads straight to your phone. Console games, they're meant to sit down and play for hours at a time, and mobile games are meant to kill time. When you're waiting for the bus, or you're waiting in line, or you're just sitting at home with not much to do, it makes perfect sense to fire up your mobile game and play for 10 or 15 minutes at a time. And ultimately, mobile phones are about communication, so what I think we're going to see over time is kind of blurring of the lines of what a cell phone can really only be used for.